Hi there, my front-end friend. A while ago, I came across this really cool code pen by Lucky VJ, Luki VJ, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, where he's created this really cool CSS-only hover effect that responds to where your mouse hovers over the button. And I really liked it. I think it's awesome, but there was one big limitation to it, which was that on mouse out, it would still use the mouse in location. So if you came in on the left, it would go out on the right and vice versa. Now, this isn't a big deal at all. I think it's really cool what he created, but it did give me a little bit of like a nagging thing of like, is it possible to even do that in the first place with CSS only? And something I just needed to figure out and see if I could do it or not. So I started off by forking his code pen and making a few sort of small changes to it, but nothing major. But before we look at how or different ways we could maybe approach this, I want to look at the limitation that is set with how he did it in the first place. So you can see here it's working, but then if I go from this side and I go that way, it's going the wrong way. So if I turn this debug grid on, this is kind of cool because the debug grid's important because if I go on this one, you can see like some of the cells are disappearing, and this is how it's working. There's just a whole bunch of cells and it detects which one we're hovering on. I'm not going to turn off the overflow actually, but if I come down to the cells, there's an important part with how they're set up, which is right here, this pointer events none. And the reason this is important is, and it's what prevents it from like moving around, but this is also what's sort of setting that limitation because we have all these different cells. But if I take this off, you're going to see what happens is if I'm hovering here and we move over, it like jumps because it's reanimating it every time. It's more noticeable if we're doing it going from right to left. And it creates a new hover effect every single time, which is what we don't want. And the reason this is happening in the first place is because every single one of the spans, if we come take a look in here, it's just a whole bunch of spans in there, which is creating that grid. And every one of those spans has its own pseudo-element. And I said, if I'm going to get this to work, I think we need to find a way to do this with one single element instead of having multiple different elements. So I wanted to see if I could do that, and we can do that with modern CSS. And so I'm going to take this hover off right here. I'm going to leave, we want the scale still to come up, but I'm going to take this before and I'm going to move it. So right now this is in our button cells. We have our span. I'm going to close that and then we're going to have our before here. And it drives me nuts. The befores with a single colon, it works. It's sort of a legacy code thing. So it still works, but I'm not going to use it. So I'm just going to do a little format here. There might be a mistake just because I probably am missing a closing tag somewhere now, or I might have one too many. Okay, so I just unnested a few things here to get us to where we are now. So you can see I still have all those cells that are coming up and we have the exact same thing at play, but it's all with one single before now. So because I'm doing it with one single before, and that before is on the button cells itself. So we're inserting, like we're doing it before here, so it'd be our before. Before is coming here, we have a single element. And what I was thinking is, if we have that before there, so that's why it's always growing just from the top left. And I want to make that grow from whichever cell I'm hovering on, instead of having a different element for each one of them. So to start with, I used anchor positioning, because anchor positioning is amazing. And I did say this is a modern CSS solution. I haven't tested the polyfill with this. I don't think the polyfill would work though, sadly, because we're going to be using sort of dynamic anchor positioning for this one, which the polyfill doesn't support. But if you do want to use anchor positioning, the polyfill is really good, and for most use cases you can definitely use it. And I actually think we can use this as a progressive enhancement anyway. So let's continue here. And what I'm going to do is on the before here, we have our position of absolute, and I'm going to say that the position anchor, and we haven't created one yet, but I'm going to say the position anchor is my active cell. Right, so let's just isolate this a little bit. I don't think we need the display block on here either, actually, so we can get rid of that. I don't think it'll change anything. We'll see, but I don't think we need that there. So position absolute, and then we're looking for an active cell. Now there is no active cell, so it doesn't actually move or go anywhere. And for now, I'm just going to say the left is my anchor. Left. And we're going to see what this does. Again, right now this doesn't do anything because we don't have an anchor, so it hasn't changed. So let's actually set this up. So we're going to say let's go find our span. So that's our button cells. Our span is a position relative. So that means that we won't even need that anymore, will we? I have to think about this a little bit. But let's come here and say and span hover. And we're going to say that the anchor name is our active cell. And let's turn on the debug grid and see if this is working at all. There, you can actually see when I hover on top, it's starting from where my mouse is. Or if I go over here, it's starting from the other side now. And so this is already working. The only problem is the top isn't working. So let's also set the top. And this is where there's a few different ways we can do this actually. Let's say, we're gonna start this way actually. This is, I do this where I build the demos before I record a video. And one thing that's interesting is as I'm doing some of these, I come up with better solutions than what my original one was. So we're gonna say that the bottom is the top of my anchor. And let's just give this has a width. Let's make, I know I have the scale of 0. Let's say a scale of 1 as a default. And with that scale on there, we can actually see it now. And let's turn off this scale as well for now, just so it'll make it a little bit easier that things aren't exploding in size as we do this. And we're also going to come all the way up and I'm gonna turn off the overflow that's on the button itself, because right now it'd be just helpful to understand what's going on. And I'll put my debug grid on because I think that's also going to help. Perfect. So what's this going to do now? We have this anchor position going to our active cell, and then we have this left and top here. So the bottom is going to the top. So that means anytime I hover, it's going to the top of the element where the bottom of it is on the top, so it sticks around the top. Now this is going to break for the bottom row. We'll fix that after. But for the top row, this is exactly what we want, where the element's lining up at the top. It's a little bit off center. We could do things to fix that, but I really don't think it matters here, just because the effect is going to be so quick. So we have that lining up exactly where we want it to. And I think that looks perfect for what we want. And of course, then it would expand out. So it's going to sort of hide off on the top and zoom out. The thing with this though is we obviously want this to sort of follow our mouse on the way out too, right? So right now it's like jumping. So let's put the scale back on and just see what type of effect this actually does give us. So when we hover on top, that looks weird. Let's put the overflow back on as well, or the overflow hidden back on, because if not, it's hard to see what's really happening. So if I go here, it's expanding from there, but there's a problem. So like there it works. We're back to where we started, right? Essentially. But this is where we can leverage having a single element instead of it being a whole bunch of different elements. And so we can come on this before again. And right now we have these two that are moving, right? So it's the calculated value of the left and the bottom is what actually is changing. So interestingly, that means that we can actually do some stuff there. So here, when I say stuff there, I mean we can transition those values. So we're not actually, this is moving, but we're not transitioning this because the position anchor value stays the same. The computed values of these are what are changing. So here, if we take a look at our transform, actually, no, I think we'll leave our transform for now. Let's slow things down a little bit though. And we're gonna need a few different duration, or we're gonna need the same duration multiple times. So just to make it simpler, let's put the scale here to 3, just so it's a little bit more subtle what's happening and makes it easier to follow. And then here for this, let's come all the way up for a second on the button. So the parent of everything. We're gonna say that the animation duration is 1 second. Just to slow everything down, as I said. So here we can, this one, whatever, we want them all to be the same, right? So animation, duration, and then we can copy that and use it everywhere we need it. So for now, that would be right here. We'll throw that in here as well. Perfect. So now it's just a little bit more subtle what's happening. I guess we could also put the overflow for now back on. So just because it's not gigantic anyway. So when I go there, we're exactly where we left off. But what I want to do is prevent it from jumping. And this is where the real trick came in. And I didn't think this was actually possible to do at the beginning. And I'm happy that it works. Is on the what we're doing right now is we're moving the anchor name. So when I go on here, it's jumping to that spot. When I leave the button, I want it to keep that in its memory for the length of the animation going away. How do we do that with CSS, right? How is that possible? And so to be able to do that, it's kind of interesting. What I'm going to do is come here, say and not hover. And the reason I'm using it's the ampersand, so we're choosing my button cells, and this could be on the button itself too, I suppose, but if we're not hovering on the button cells, which is all the red things there that we can see, if we're not hovering on one of those, I want to select the spans that are inside of it. And what I want to do is transition the anchor name. Now, the problem is I can't transition the anchor name because it's a discrete animation. Because if you think about it, like what's the in-between of having an anchor name and not having an anchor name? There is no in-between. The browser can't interpolate between those values. So it's considered a discrete animation. So like if we go over to the anchor name here in the MDM, if you go to, I believe it's the formal definition. Yeah, the formal definitions, they're going to show you the initial value, other things, and they're going to show you the animation type. And if ever you see discrete here, that's what it means is you can do an animation with it with keyframe animations, but between the two values that change, it's going to keep one of them, and halfway through, it's going to switch. But if something is a discrete animation, with the way CSS works, is it means transitions don't work. You cannot have a transition, and it would break all transitions. Like if we tried transitioning other stuff here, by trying to transition the anchor name, we'd actually break how the entire transition on this. So what can we do about that? So, because as I said, this isn't going to work. But what we can do is do a transition behavior now. Behavior. And you might have seen this if you're looking at how to transition from display none to display block or grid or flex or whatever you need. So what we can do, I got to spell it right, behavior is allow discrete. And what that means is the transition will now work even if you're trying to do it with something with a discrete animation on it. And this is going to work perfectly, but what I'm also going to do, I actually want this transition to be 0 milliseconds long. I want it to instantly change still, which it would do anyway. But what I want to do is have a delay on here. So transition delay of the length of our transition. Did I call it animation or transition duration? Transition duration. For some reason, I think I called it animation duration. Let's go double check before we see if this is, I did call it animation duration. Okay. So we'll do animation. And now that we've done that, this is cool because now when I hover on top, we're going to see it on the bottom actually, and we'll have to change something to do it on the top, very small. But if I come off, you see how it saves it and then it goes. So if I'm here, it keeps that position as soon as the animation is done. So the delay is finished, then it transition this back to the starting spot. The starting spot will always be invisible, so it really doesn't matter, and it instantly jumps wherever we go there and then comes off. Right now at the top, it's jumping, but the only reason this is happening is because the overflow, we're going to want this in. So when I'm coming off the cells, but I'm still hovering on top of the pseudo-element that's there, so it's just causing a little glitch. But if I go here now and I come off the top, you can see it's remembering the position, and then it jumps back to the original place. Remembers the position, jumps back. So if I come here and then I move my mouse, it's following me the whole way along, and then it's going to remember the position and jump back. So just by doing that delay on there, with this allow discrete, we can remember or track the position that way. So now we just want to fix it. So at the top, it's always good at the top, but we want to fix the bottom. So luckily fixing the bottom is really easy to do. Right now we're looking, so span hover is all of the spans. I want to do something different if we're in the second row, but we also only want to be selecting the before, because basically what I'm going to do is just change this. I'm going to remove the bottom and switch things around, this is different from what I did before, but it's the same principle, and this is a lot cleaner. So I'm going to take this and before here. We're going to come all the way down here, but I'm just trying to think. Okay, we're going to go here actually, and we're going to do an and has, and on this we're using modern CSS, so we can get away with using the has selector. So this is our button cells. So that's this, we're looking at this div right now. So our button cells, if we want to do a nth child of n plus 11, hover. Let's just say we do that and we say background is red for now, just so we can see what that's actually going to do. So when I hover, they're all getting it, right? So then we can actually say, let's repeat that selector. So it's only going to do the bottom half. So you can see if I'm hovering on the bottom half, we're highlighting that bottom half right now. It's a little bit over complex how I've set that up, but all the bottom cells are being selected if I do this. Now I don't want to select all the bottom cells. What I actually want to select is that pseudo element right here. So we can say then our before. So if we're hovering on those bottom cells, now my pseudo elements actually, that broke something, I don't know. But yeah, so the before should be here. And so with the red background on here now, if I hover on the top ones, it's normal. But if I go on the bottom ones, it's red because we're only selecting them when they're in, we're only selecting the before if we're hovering on the second row of these, right? And we have the 2 rows set up. So 10 across there and then 10 at the bottom. So starting at the 11th one, we're selecting it. Now I don't want to change the background to red, but what I do want to do is change the bottom value, right? Because right now our bottom is set to the top, so that's why it's like hiding off the top. And I want to change that. And right now our width and height here are set to 50. I think what I'm going to do is aspect ratio this, or aspect ratio of 1. Same thing, but I just like doing that type of thing. So no impact on that. The other thing I'm going to do is come all the way, I think we can leave this here actually, because it's very specific. I'm just going to say the size here is 50 pixels. And we're going to do a var of 50 pixels, just in case we want to change it at one point. I don't think we ever would, just because it's all set on the scaling. So we could probably hard code this, but I'm going to do it anyway, except this should be 50 pixels. This should be size. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to change the inset, or the bottom here. So I'm going to say the bottom is now my anchor of bottom, but we want to add the 50. So I can do var size. But I'm doing a calculation, so we do need to wrap that all inside of a calc. And the reason I'm doing it this way is instead of changing the top is because I want to be able to transition this. And so if I want to be able to transition the bottom, I need to supply it a different value for it to move in, instead of removing the bottom and putting it to a top value instead, because then it's not going to figure that out. It's looking at the computed values of what these are. So I want the bottom value to actually change so we can animate the bottom value on those. So now it won't actually change anything, but we're going to use the same trick that we used before, where actually let's come here. Right now we're transitioning our transform. I'm just going to say all, because why not? It just makes our life a little bit easier. So now when I move around, it actually transitions because we're transitioning that inset value. And that means here, actually, I think that didn't work. Maybe I wanted a minus here instead of a plus, because that should be when I'm here. That was what I wanted. So you can see now when I'm up here, it's there. And when I go down there, it slides down to the bottom. So that means if I'm here and I go off, ooh, that's a problem. And the problem is when I come off, it's going back to what the original one was. So it's moving back up to the top. So we're going to use the exact same trick we did before, where we're going to say and not hover before. And so when we're not hovering on it, we're going to do a transition of our inset. We're going to have to do 2 here. We're going to say our inset of 0 milliseconds, comma, and our transform of our var animation duration. I need to do these separately. I want to make sure that this still works exactly as it was working up until now. So I just have to redeclare that. And the main reason then is because I want to do a transition delay, and I'm going to do a var animation duration, comma 0. And the 0 for timing functions do actually, you can't put a 0 with a timing function. It has to have a unit on there. So we could just do seconds, I guess, and seconds here. So we're going to transition the inset over 0 seconds. We could even get rid of like this. We don't really need to say 0. I don't think it would matter. But it's going to get delayed by the length of the animation, whereas this one, I want it working the same way whether we're hovering or not. And so now, if I go on the bottom, and I leave on the bottom, it works. So it's doing that, it's staying there, and then at the end, it still jumps back to the original location. But that means if I go here, and then I go over to here, and then I go off, it goes that way. Yeah, so it's working. The main thing I want to do now is bring my scale back up to 12. And with the scale at 12, I go here, it fills up. If I move my mouse over and then I go out, it follows my mouse that way. And then if I go this way, it's just always following my mouse. Of course, I also want the scale to be 0 right there. So now we don't see it. So it doesn't exist until we hover. And then when I leave, it follows. The only downside for this is if I move really fast, it's possible that like, you get little weird things like that going on. Just because as it's moving, it's already starting to transition down. Now, part of that is also we have quite a slow animation going on right now too, that might be causing that issue. So we could come up here and maybe make this like a 0.5 seconds instead of a 1 second animation. And now it seems to be working pretty good. And if I go pretty fast, it should still. All right, we get, just because the animation's a bit snappier, you still can run into those situations where it's sort of rearranging itself a little bit, but it's still pretty directionally aware of where our mouse is on both entry and exit, which I think is pretty awesome that we're able to do that. And the cool thing with this is it's also going to work as a progressive enhancement. This is in Firefox. So right now it's doesn't break the hover effect. It just doesn't have the mouse tracking to go with it. So obviously anchor positioning is a newer thing, not perfectly supported, but at least it's better than nothing in that we still have a hover effect happening in the first place. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this look at what we can do with some modern CSS techniques these days, and something that will gain support as time goes on. I hope you really did enjoy it. If you did and you haven't yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. And with that, I would like to thank my enabler of awesome, Johnny, as well as all my other patrons and channel members for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.